This is the PitCast. From fans, for fans. Lewis Hamilton's tires. Should he go in? Should he go, on his way? What about Charles? What about Esteban? Or, what about the winner, Valtteri Bottas, who, I don't know, maybe had the race of his life or whatnot? I am Dimitris. I'm not alone, and as you can tell, I'm not British, which is not a minus, but it's a thing. This is my second ever podcast, and I host it. And I wouldn't be a good host if I didn't introduce the other pitcasters. Let's say I can trademark that as we speak. So let's start with the ladies. Jessica Bird. Hello, Jessica.
You're right. It's good to be here again. I had a week off and now I'm back.
Yeah, I mean, we rotate, and that's good because different voices, different opinions. And
Yes.
and then we go to the boys. Taras Daddy. Taras, how are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, a bit nervous because, English. But
Yeah, it's nice to be in here. It's the race was actually fantastic, but it was a lot of drama. But yeah, it's nice to be back on the PitCast after a long wilderness break.
So Valtteri Bottas won his first win of the season, of course. His first since last year's Russian Grand Prix, which is a long, long time ago. And he seems to be on top of his form after he sorted out his future when he signed this new agreement with Alfa Romeo Sauber and he was ready to embark on his new adventures. He seems to be a little bit more at peace with himself. He seems to be able to extract more from his car and the performance he has within him. And I want to hear Jess on that and then Taras.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I'm sure I saw an interview with George Russell not that long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and it said that it was Alex Albon, sorry. Alex Albon, he said that he was waiting on some stuff back in like Austria to find out. So it sounded to me as if Bottas sort of already knew a lot earlier on in the season, which I don't know whether that means he needed it to be announced for it to be okay, but I don't know. I think he seems to be a little bit better in the last couple races, but I wouldn't say like we're not seeing Bottas 2.0 as we did before with, every time he was winning that first race of the season. But I mean, I don't know, maybe he is more at peace with himself. I'm not sure that he's fully back to what he was when he was like first came into Mercedes, but he does seem happier in terms of when he's interviewed and stuff. So maybe he is just generally happier and is just, I don't know. I'm not sure he's back on form, put it that way.
Taras?
I think at peace with himself is perhaps the best word for it. When you're up against somebody like Max Verstappen or Michael Schumacher in his heyday, and of course Lewis, and you can go back to Senna and so forth and Prost. Being a teammate to one of those drivers is the hardest job in the world to do, and given that you go into Formula One thinking you are going to win the championship one day, it might be this season or next season or whatever, having to face that realization that you're not going to win is where you have to find a peace with yourself. And I think he's finally found that, because Jess talked about Bottas 2.0. Yes, we saw a glimpse of it, but he couldn't keep that up. It's incredibly difficult to do that against Lewis. You saw what Nico had to do to be above Lewis, and that was a lot of luck in his part and other things going wrong with Lewis's engine. So, yeah, it's a very hard thing to say, but I think finding peace with himself, going to Alpha next year, it's a new start for him. he's not going to win another Grand Prix unless something weird happens in the Grand Prix. But I kind of feel sorry for him, but I feel, he's a nice chap. You want him to do well, so hopefully he will do well at Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, Valtteri is a very weird kind of driver because, of course, as you said, Taras, it's not easy to be the teammate of a 7-time world champion. But then again, sometimes he tried to make himself look like he's up and ready to go against Lewis and actually beat him, which of course hasn't happened and will not happen since he will leave the team with the end of this season. But yeah, it's nice to actually see, a driver who has been a proven winner and has won Grand Prix in the past, showing that he's able to do it again. The car is there. He had the opportunity, and it was a bit of a redemption because last year's Turkish Grand Prix for him was dismal to say the least. 5 spins and not the best outcome for him. Moving on, since we mentioned Lewis Hamilton, of course, the 7-time world champion does not hold the lead of the standings, leaving Istanbul because Max Verstappen got ahead of him by 6 points as we stand right now. But he had a weird race as well because he started from P11, taking his penalty for a new internal combustion engine. Of course, he changed only one part of his power unit. He started P11. He had a rough, I believe, climb up to P4 or P3 before going to the pits. Yuki Tsunoda gave him the worst, the most. Actually, he was the most feisty driver in front of Lewis, with good reason. And when the race came to a point where you had to decide if you wanted to go to change your tires or not, Lewis decided against it for 10 laps, actually. And then he caved into his team's command and actually said, okay, I'm going to come in since I see that there's no use of staying out. Do you guys believe, starting from Taras and going to Jess, that Hamilton should have listened to his team earlier going to the pits, or do you believe that he could carry on and actually have a better result in his hand?
You know what? That's one of the hardest questions you can actually ask. Because I'll tell you why. In FP3, Mercedes didn't do much running, so they had no clue as to what those inters was going to do in that GP. And because they did renew the surface, the track surface, it had more grip. So they had no clue as to what was going to happen. And so there, that to answer that question is hard because I don't think Mercedes really knew until they saw what the others were doing. I've forgotten who went on to Slicks. It was one of the Williams
Sebastian.
ones. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Sebastian did. Sorry, I don't know why I said Williams, but anyway.
No, it's okay.
Sebastian went on there, and you saw that was the aim of Lewis's game, but he wanted to go into slicks 2 or 3 laps before and just blitz it, 5 or 6 seconds faster than everybody else. But the track wasn't drying because of a new surface. So these are things what completely threw Lewis's game plan. And the problem is that when you're driving, you're doing about 200 things at once, and you think this is it, my game plan is working, and he couldn't see that it wasn't, and Mercedes did, but I don't think they realised beforehand that it wouldn't work, so they only knew in the race. So he should have come in earlier. I think that's obvious, and hindsight says yes, he should have. But you could see his game plan. You could see a dry line coming through, and yet it didn't work out for him. So I can see the frustration. I can see his game plan, but it just simply didn't work.
Jess?
Yeah, I agree, essentially. So I agree that he should have come in earlier. Should have come in at the same time as Perez, essentially, to cover him off. and then back with him back all the way back. I do think that at the point when he did pit, I think he should have just left it then. If the team should have, then in my head, the team should have dropped it. Now, they have all their sort of simulations and stuff, and I'm sure when I was watching it, so I watched the Sky coverage, I'm sure Ted said that he found out that they've got some sort of race simulator that means they can simulate where they'll end up. And it was looking like had he stayed on the tyres, he would have been behind Perez and Leclerc. But I do think had he stayed there, like they had to fight to get past him, and he would have fought back. I don't think his tyres would have necessarily blown up. Ocon's lasted just about. He wouldn't have gone through that graining period in quite a crucial place. Had he gone through that graining period earlier on, he then would have got past it and managed to keep going. So, for me, it's a case of he should have pitted when Perez did, and because he didn't, he shouldn't have pitted at all. Just carried on and kept track position, because even if he ended up 4th, not 3rd, that still is less of a gap. He wouldn't be 6 points behind now. But I don't know. It's all, as you say, it's as Tara said, it's all hindsight. Hindsight's a lovely thing, and I'm sure if we could run a race in hindsight, well, probably be the same again, I imagine. But because they'd all have hindsight and they'd be very different. But yeah, I think he should have pitted earlier and then not pitted at all. Basically.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I completely agree with you, because at the end of the day, he would have gone between P3 and P5 whichever actual thing, whichever route he went through. That's all you'd have got out of that race. You know, in some ways, you can coming back to hindsight, you can say, well, that's the best he could have done, and actually, that's the best what Max could have done, because he had issues as well. Well hidden, because he was sort of safe between Valtteri and the P3 guys, because that changed several times over the race. And so he was comfortable between those two. So you didn't see the problems, but both of them actually got the best out of that race as much as they could do, which is actually an interesting thing. That's why you don't see either team really gloating about it.
Yeah, actually, one of the hardest decisions to make is when is that crossover time, when you want to switch to slicks, which was not the case in Istanbul. And the other thing is, when do you believe that the intermediates or the wets are done? You have to change the tire, not the compound. You have to change to a new set of tires. I completely agree with both of you. I mean, it's easy to see that you can do some things better when it's over. 2020 hindsight, as they say. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. He got out of there with the 5th position, 10 points. Could have been worse. Turkey is not an easy track to overtake, especially without DRS, since we were on a wet race, a race that was declared wet, and it stayed like that for all its duration. So yeah, it is what it is. I believe Mercedes, sometimes they crumble under pressure, but this time they didn't. They told him what to do. He thought otherwise, and we have to think about it. And I want to put that topic in the table right now, on the table. Excuse me for the grammatical and syntax error. Well, this race could prove decisive, as all of them when you are on that latter part of the season, for the championship. Because Max came into the race 2 points behind Lewis, which is nothing, especially in this era where a win is 25 points and the second place is 18. But he's leaving with a 6 point gap in advantage for him. He has a 6 point advantage over Lewis. And with the next Grand Prix being in circuits that may have, that Red Bull actually may have a bit of an advantage, especially Mexico and Austin, I do believe that maybe we see a bit of a turn of events. Maybe Red Bull actually is the fastest car on track, and now Lewis has to fight for more points to get his point advantage back and, of course, win the championship. And I want to hear, firstly, Jess on that, and then Taras, and we go on from there.
Yeah, excuse me. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think what difference is the Russian Grand Prix. Right at the end of the Russian Grand Prix, obviously it rained, and there was massive heartbreak for Lando. We're really sorry about that. But Max Verstappen gained massively because people were trying to decide what to do with themselves. And he ended up on the podium, and he wasn't there. He wasn't going to be there at all. He was like in P7 or something, before the rain got heavier. So I think had he not managed to get that podium, we would be in a different position. Every race now is key. Every single position that they finish in is key to the championship. It will go down to the wire. I'm very, very excited about it because we've not had that for a little while. I'm not sure you could argue necessarily that the Red Bull is the fastest car. You can. That's wrong. You can argue that Red Bull is the fastest car. Austin is notoriously a Lewis Hamilton track rather than Mercedes, so we will see how that works. But I think every race is key now. Every single moment that happens, everything that happens with their teammates is important as well, because the constructors is not wrapped up either. Mercedes are ahead by a significant advantage, but not enough at securing their position. So Bottas's win is really important, but there was a double Red Bull podium at Istanbul, and that's vital for them. So everything's key now. Everything's key. It's so exciting, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the end of the season. Oddly, yeah, it's just everything. Everything is important now. Every single move that they make. The fact that Lewis only had to take a 10-place grid penalty is important, because it probably means he's going to have to take another one at some point, because as far as I'm aware, they only changed the combustion engine, which is why he didn't get the full 30 places like they normally get when they change an engine.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be important. He's probably going to have to take another penalty at some point. So that will be key. Max Verstappen, as far as I'm aware, will not have to anymore. So he can start on pole or wherever it is he qualifies. So, yeah, it's just the whole thing is key. It's so exciting. Every F1 fan is fully ready for it. Yeah. Yeah, everything's important.
Taras?
Oh, I do agree with Jess's analysis of that. Every single race is now key. There's 150 points up on the table. So there's that. And the constructors, even though there's about 100 points in it, I think it's 70 to 100 offhand. Again, that's tight. But this is where I disagree. Lewis took that 10-place grid penalty. He only did his combustion engine. Mercedes are confident that they do not have to change any more parts, which is actually a genius move if you think about it. If that plays out to how it should be, that is a genius move. If not, then it hasn't worked out, obviously. But Red Bull is confident they don't have to do another PU change. So, again, we don't know. They've had problems with other units, other elements of powertrain. So, let's see. They are more on shaky ground. So, you got that. I would say that normally Kota is Lewis's track. It's his. It's like he's the king of Kota. But Seb has one there, and I can't remember if Max has, but there's also a very good chance he could win there, which could unsettle Lewis. If that happens, then you got a 10-point gap, 11-point gap, and that starts to put pressure on Lewis more. But if Lewis wins and Max is second, you've got that gap going back down to 1 point. it puts stress on both of them, but more stress on Max, whether he likes to admit it or not. But the big problem with those next 6 races is Qatar and Saudi Arabia. We've not been there. We have got no clue as to what's going to happen. And the Saudi Arabia track is completely new, and it's by the sea. So what happens on Friday might be a different track on Sunday. Just like how the track at, in the Netherlands. So
Zandvoort.
yeah, I completely forgot the name of it.
Zandvoort, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got that, and I think, in fact, as much as it's going to go down to a wire, it could actually be decided at Saudi Arabia. So that's a kicker in all of this. But it's so difficult to know, and we don't know. We haven't seen Lewis really ever choke, except for his first year in F1. We have seen Max have his red mist moments, which will be interesting. So it's going to be interesting whether that comes into play. If it doesn't, he's got a very, very good chance of winning his first World Championship. If it does come into play, he's lost the championship.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty interesting, and I do agree that it's going down to the wire. And I sincerely hope that we get a title decider in the all new Abu Dhabi part of the track. I don't know, maybe the turn 5, I believe it's the new one, and the back of the long straight is new. I'd love to see something happening there because it's new. It's a new territory for them in terms of how to approach it. Zed, of course, is an all new track, a brand new track. No indication as to what will happen there. And actually, it's not a finished track either. The Saudis have said that it will be just before the F1 circus comes to town that they will be able to open up the track, which is of course a concern because that's what happened in Istanbul last year, with the oils of the track being not dry, of course, and the whole circuit was slippery as an ice skating. I don't know, like you play hockey or something. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to see. And I do believe that going back to Turkey and the Turkish Grand Prix, what will play a role in that fight is the performance of the, let's say, number 2 drivers. I don't think that's a derogative term. I do believe that it is how the order goes in both Mercedes and Red Bull. Bottas won, of course, as Jess said. That's very important for the Constructors' Championship. And Perez managed to not only finish ahead of Lewis, but actually have a bit of a fight with him and win that fight, which is very strange in terms of 2021 Sergio Perez kind of performance and mentality. He hasn't been that strong, especially after his win in Baku. So is Perez back? Do you believe, starting with Taras and going to Jess, that maybe Sergio Perez can play a vital role in the championship, going to be a wingman for his teammate?
You know what? Mercedes got a problem in Sergio, because at the moment I would say Sergio is stronger than Valtteri, and even though Valtteri won that Turkish Grand Prix, he's typically weaker when he's behind. He's a great leader, and when he's ahead on P1, Valtteri is as good as Lewis at keeping that lead. But in some ways it's easy to do that. It's hard, but it's still easier. But you get Valtteri down P3, P4. He struggles with the overtakes. He struggles with a lot of things in a race. So I think if there's an ace in any of the teams at the moment, it's Sergio for Red Bull, and that's maybe the decider for at least the constructors. But I don't know. I think Jess will disagree with me with some of that, but but yeah, no, I really do think if a team has got an ace under the sleeves, it's Red Bull with Sergio.
Jess?
Yeah, unbelievably, I'm going to agree with you. I think, I think Perez has definitely reformed in the last couple weekends. Is generally, I would say, overall better than Bottas throughout an entire season. I mean, obviously, we haven't seen the end of the season yet, so we don't know whether he'll continue his form. But normally, in the Racing Point, he's done much better towards the end of the season. He obviously famously got that win last year at the end of the season after fighting back from the back of the grid, essentially. So I think overall he is much stronger than Bottas, and yeah, it is going to be extremely important, those number 2 drivers, even for next year as well, I would say, because obviously Bottas is moving on, but then we've got the battle between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton coming into play with Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Now, there isn't going to be the same dynamic at Red Bull because Max is number 1 there, is and always will be until he leaves that team. Lewis Hamilton is number 1 there at the moment, but George Russell coming in, he's the future, and I'm not sure if he's quicker in my head than Valtteri Bottas in that Mercedes. Well, he proved it when he was insecure. So next year it's going to be an issue for them. This year, I still think that's an issue for them. I think if Perez can stay on the current form he's on, we might be looking at the first time since, I think, 2008 when the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship were won by different teams.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, I would say, I think if Lewis wins, there's potential Red Bull win the Constructors and vice versa. So Perez is going to give them a real problem. He is a real problem. I think the other team we need to mention is probably McLaren, because they seem to be stealing performances from Red Bull and Mercedes in the second half of the year, and I'm fully here for it. And I think it means that those performances where like Perez or Bottas are down towards the back end of the points, McLaren are right up there stealing them from them, and that is gonna come into play at the end of the season. How many positions can McLaren gain on Red Bull? I mean, I know they're not close to them in terms of the points, but in terms of where that will leave the 2 top teams, that's really, really important.
Sorry, do you want to go ahead and I'll say mine a bit afterwards?
No, continue.
Okay. I was going to say, actually, I was completely forgot about McLaren and Ferrari. I would actually add Ferrari into the mix as well, because they've got a new engine refinement out, and that's doing its job. You saw that in the Turkish Grand Prix, but they were back there, minus the mistakes. So you got both of them biting at the heel. So if one or the other, in terms of Mercedes or Red Bull, make a mistake, you got those right up that mix. So you know, it isn't a straight fight between the two. It could be the 4 teams.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree with this thought. What I would say is that when it comes to actually winning the races and all that, Red Bull and Mercedes have that thing that lacks, that both McLaren and Ferrari lack, which is consistency and being able to be competitive in every type of track. They are not, they do not have this type of car to actually do that. Both McLaren and Ferrari were strong in tracks that seemed to suit them completely in terms of philosophy in the designing of the car. Don't forget Leclerc getting the pole at Monaco and Baku, because it's both of these tracks have the similar characteristic of being a street circuit and a close, very technical circuit, minus the long straight of Baku, but that didn't seem to hurt the Ferrari so much. And he could have won Monaco. I believe he would have won if he didn't do the mistake in qualifying. Baku would be another story. And then McLaren took the win in tracks that suited them in terms of top speed and all that, which is Monza, and Sochi. They didn't win in Sochi. They could have won in Sochi. They got one win. They lost one. So yeah, it is true that both of these teams have cut some of the gains that the Mercedes and Red Bull could have made in terms of points and positions, of course. But when they, I don't know why if there is a saying in English for that. In Greek we say when the potato is very hot, meaning that when things get serious. Some people do not have it in them, and some cars do not have it in them. McLaren and Ferrari are not cars that can get this fight to both of these teams on the top at a frequent rate. Maybe Mexico or Jeddah, McLaren may have a bit of an advantage because they are both very high speed, very high speed tracks in terms of the straights they have and all that. But yeah, we shall see. And closing off the podcast, I'd like to talk more about Ferrari in Turkey because they had the strongest weekend of these two teams. McLaren managed to get points only from Nando, when Ferrari had Charles Leclerc almost winning the race and then going in P4, which is not a bad result in the grand scheme of things. And Carlos, of course, with the comeback of the race, I believe his best race of the year, which was the P20 to P8. And I wrote something about that on the pitcrewonline.net, of course, on an opinion piece. So it's a bit of a, the Monegasque had a not so good but respectable race. Carlos had the best race of those two. What do you think of Ferrari's race in Turkey, and if that means that they can actually top McLaren at the end of the season, Jess first and Taras afterwards?
I think Leclerc sort of had a bit of a no man's land performance right up until everybody started pitting. And then it was a case of, I'm in the lead, and he couldn't decide. A bit like Lewis, I guess. He was contemplating whether to put the intermediates on or not, and he should have pitted earlier or not at all. Well, I don't know. He should have pitted earlier, and when he pitted, he came back out in fourth, which is where he started. So that's not a terrible performance. That's actually a good performance. That's a solid weekend for him. I would say that was just a strategy call with the confusion of the track and the weather and stuff that everybody seemed to be having. In terms of Carlos Sainz, he seemed to be overtaking people every single lap, and it was fantastic to watch. He fully deserved driver of the day because he was the entertainment. I'm joking. It was a good race, but he did a really good job. And I think to get points in a race where it's tricky conditions, people couldn't decide on the tires, what was going on. You need to have that kind of, enough experience behind you, along with enough sort of skill and technical ability to know how to get through the drivers and up the grid. I didn't explain that very well, but that is what I mean. He just had a solid performance, and as Tara said a bit earlier, their new engine wiring seems to have worked. It seems to have made them, this year in particular, for the whole year, I would say, it seems to put them up a step from 2020, and which is good. That's great. It's a great thing to see. And they, generally speaking, have had a good time. A good time. And I think Carlos just proved that actually that Ferrari really works for him. He's adapted to it really well, and he's done that all year. It really works for him, and he just looked like he was having good fun, wasn't he? He just racing around a track with his mates.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a good race for Ferrari in general. The thing with Leclerc was just a strategy call, which everybody seemed to be confusing. So win some, you lose some, I suppose.
Yeah. Taras?
You know what? Ferrari, I think there's a couple of things there you got to split apart. When they announced Carlos and Charles originally, I think a lot of us thought, what is Ferrari doing? Because normally you have Ferrari's traditionally done a very experienced person and a new person, or somebody they know but is not going to deflect from their number one driver. We've seen that numerous times with Ferrari. They've said publicly stated to their employees, you do what we want you to do. That completely went out of the window with these two. And Charles and Carlos have got, they're in a different cycles of a career. Carlos is sort of towards his end, in the middle, towards his end kind of thing. Charles has got a future which includes a world championship somewhere or two. So you got that, but especially last year and this year, Charles has made so many mistakes. It's Leclerc in the wall, Leclerc has spun or whatever. There's been so many instances of it, and last couple of races, they both put their heads down. Ferrari's put their heads down, and they're just getting the job done. And I am quite surprised with Ferrari. We're not making silly comments in the media. We're not trashing the media. We're just doing their job, and it's paying off. So I'm happy, but they came out of underneath the radar, and they could be quite good next year. Assuming, that is a bit of a tall order. We don't know where anybody's going to be next year, but they could be quite good.
Yeah, we shall see. The next season is very interesting in all aspects, if you look at it, from the technical side or the driver's side or the grid side or whatnot. So we're gonna see. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. That was this week's PitCast. Jess, tell us, where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. It's at @TMotorsportGirl.
And Taras?
I'm on Twitter as well, and it's Crustylicious.
Great. And I was Dimitris Bizas. You can find me at Dimitris Bizas _ And this was this episode of this week. See you out on track. Bye-bye.